We saw how Japanese automakers, facing a tariff roller coaster in the United States, began a quiet migration of investment north. They were not just chasing subsidies, they were chasing something far more valuable in the 21st century economy: predictability. We learned that global corporations no longer bet on proximity, they bet on stability. And Canada, with its open trade policies and steady political climate, became the quiet hub for Japan's automotive presence. But that story, the story of the winner, is only half of the equation. It's the comfortable half. And it forces us to ask a much harder question, a question that is often ignored. If Canada is the silent winner, who is the silent loser? In the noise of this global shift, many pointed to Lafayette, Indiana, home to a massive Subaru plant, as the perfect example. It became ground zero for the narrative, the victim of this economic war. The story that was told was simple and clean. That new 25% tariffs on parts and vehicles created a financial dead end. That these policies, designed to protect American jobs, had backfired, forcing Subaru to stop producing its popular Outback model in Indiana and move that production back to Japan. It was the perfect, tragic symbol of the US manufacturing crisis. But what if that story isn't the whole truth? Because when we dug into the data, when we followed the timeline, we found something else. The truth is, Subaru's decision to shift production, the plan to move the Outback and Legacy models out of Indiana, was announced in May of 2024. That was before the new wave of tariffs was finalized. The story wasn't about tariffs. It was about a strategic pivot. The Lafayette plant, according to reports from Inside Indiana Business, wasn't being abandoned. It was being retooled to build the vehicles that are selling even faster. The Forester. And, crucially, the Forester Hybrid. This strategic shift wasn't expected to cut jobs. It was projected to add around 100 new ones. So, why was the first story, the story about tariffs and abandonment, so easy to believe? This reveals a much deeper, more important secret about the American heartland. The fear of being hollowed out has become so real, so ingrained in the American identity, that any change, any corporate announcement, any global shift is now seen through the immediate lens of loss and abandonment. The fear is real, even when the facts of a specific story are more complicated. Today, we are not going to tell the simple story. We are going to tell the true one. This isn't just about the cost of being left behind. It's about the anatomy of that fear. And, more importantly, we will investigate the story that no one is telling. The story of how these communities are staging the American counterpunch to take back control of their future. Anatomy of the hollowing out. Why is that fear so powerful? Why is the wound in the Rust Belt economy so raw? Because the pain is real. The memory of loss is not history. For many, it is a daily reality. The narrative of the hollowing out isn't a political slogan. It's the lived experience of millions. To understand the counterpunch, you first have to understand what these communities are fighting against. It starts with the initial shock. When a major factory does leave, when the gates are chained and the lights go out, the first number we hear on the news is the number of jobs lost. 500, 1,000, 3,000. But that number is a sterile, clean statistic. It fails to capture the human cost. Have you ever felt that? That feeling of being stuck? The feeling that the job you dedicated 30 years of your life to, the one that paid for your mortgage, that sent your kids to college, that job could simply vanish because of a decision made in a boardroom 1,000 miles away or a political policy signed in Washington, D.C. For many American auto workers, especially those over 55, this is not just the loss of a paycheck. It's the loss of a pension plan. It's the loss of health insurance, just as you are beginning to need it most. It's the terrifying realization that you have to re-enter a job market that no longer values the specific, hard-won skills you spent a lifetime perfecting. That is the initial shock. But that is only the first domino to fall. This is the secret that the national news reports always miss. An auto plant, or any major manufacturing hub, never exists in a vacuum. It is the heart of a complex, living ecosystem. And when the heart stops, the entire body begins to fail. We focus on the assembly jobs. We forget about the supplier jobs. According to data, the auto parts manufacturing industry directly employs over 871,000 Americans. International automakers alone support a network of nearly 2.4 million jobs in the U.S., both direct and indirect. These are the small, often family-owned businesses that make the seats. The metal stampers, the wire harness creators, the logistics and trucking companies that feed the main plant when an assembly plant changes its strategy, or worse, when it leaves. It doesn't just create one wave. It creates a tsunami that washes over this entire fragile network. These suppliers, who built their entire business model to serve one giant customer, are suddenly left with no one to sell to. The hollowing out isn't just one factory closing. It's the dozens of smaller suppliers that quietly shut their doors 6 months later. It's the help wanted sign coming down at the local diner. It's the hardware store that sees its sales drop by 40%. That is the collapse of the ecosystem. And finally, there is the third, most silent, ripple. This is the one that hits everyone, even those who never set foot inside a factory. It's the tax base. A large industrial plant is often the single biggest property taxpayer in its county. That money, that single check, is what pays for the local public schools. It pays the salaries of police officers and firefighters. It pays to pave the roads and maintain the public parks. When that factory disappears, that revenue evaporates, and the hollowing out becomes a physical reality. The local government is faced with an impossible choice. Do you double the property taxes on your citizens who are already struggling, or do you start cutting services? It's the sound of the high school football stadium lights not turning on. It's the close sign on the public library door. It's the 911 call that takes 10 minutes longer to answer. This is the hollowing out of the middle class. It's not just an economic event. It's a social one. It's the loss of identity, the loss of community pride. It's the brain drain of the next generation, as the brightest young people are forced to leave their hometown to find opportunity. This is the anatomy of the fear. It is real. It is justified. And it explains why these communities, the heartland of America, are no longer waiting for a savior. They have awakened, and they are fighting back. The American counterpunch. So, faced with this constant, grinding instability, faced with a tariff roller coaster from Washington and strategic pivots from Tokyo, what are these communities in the Rust Belt economy supposed to do? Do they just accept their fate? Do they become industrial ghosts? The answer is no. A counterpunch is quietly being staged. A Rust Belt revival. But it is not the counterpunch you might think. They are not just lining up with massive tax breaks, begging for another single, giant factory to come and save them. They have learned the brutal lesson of the last 40 years. They have awakened to a new reality. The lesson is this: dependency on a single industry or a single employer is no longer a strategy for security. It is a recipe for disaster. The new American counterpunch is not about rebuilding the past. It's about building a future that is diversified, resilient, and independent. And the first weapon in this fight is not concrete or steel. It's education. Across the heartland, the first line of defense is no longer the factory wall. It's the community college. These states are pouring resources into targeted, rapid reskilling programs. They are not just retraining, they are upskilling. Look at Ohio. The state has poured millions into its RAPIDS program. That stands for Regionally Aligned Priorities in Delivering Skills. In March 2025, $8 million was allocated to colleges to purchase state-of-the-art equipment that businesses actually use, to train students for high-demand jobs. This isn't theory. It's hands-on practice. That same spirit is in Lorain County, Ohio. A consortium of 5 community colleges just secured a $5.7 million federal grant. Their mission? To build a workforce partnership that directly addresses the skills gap in advanced manufacturing. This isn't about training someone to pull a lever, a job that will be automated tomorrow. They are unlocking the potential of the existing workforce. They are creating the robot technicians, the automated logistics specialists, the wind turbine maintenance crews. The Michigan Community College Association is now actively partnering with Ohio's association, sharing strategies, and building a unified regional plan to meet the next wave of labor demands. They are transforming decades of hands-on manufacturing experience into a high-tech advantage. This is the first part of the community recovery plan, investing in people. The second, and most critical, part of the counterpunch is strategy. The new rule is simple: diversify. The old way was elephant hunting. Local officials would spend years and millions in tax incentives trying to land one mega factory from an automotive giant. The new way is deer hunting. Instead of chasing one elephant, they are strategically pursuing 10 or 20 deer, small to medium-sized companies in high-growth, resilient fields. They are fundamentally changing their economic identity. Instead of just being the auto belt, they are leveraging their core strengths to attract entirely new industries. What is the Rust Belt's greatest strength? Location. They are the circulatory system of the nation. So, they are counterpunching by becoming a hub for logistics. They aren't just building warehouses. They are building the automated, high-tech micro-fulfillment centers that the 2025 economy demands. They are attracting companies that are mastering supply chain automation and efficient distribution. The second target? MedTech. The State of the MedTech Industry report for 2025 highlights a massive boom, not just in devices, but in AI-driven diagnostics and supply chain resilience. These are high-value products that require precision manufacturing, the very skill that the Rust Belt workforce has in its DNA. These states are fighting to attract the companies that make surgical robots, diagnostic tools, and high-tech medical components. It's a clean industry, it's high-paying, and it is not dependent on the price of steel or the whims of a single automaker. This is the new strategy. This is the Rust Belt revival. But we must be truthful. We must be real. This is an uphill battle. It is not easy. It is one thing to offer a reskilling program. It is another to convince a 5-8-year-old assembly worker who is proud of the life they built to go back to school and learn code. And attracting a high-tech medtech firm to a town once known for coal or steel is a fierce global competition. The biggest question remains, the one truth that is hard to face. Will these new jobs, in logistics, in medtech, in green energy, will they truly replace what was lost? Will they provide the same 6-figure salaries, the same union protections, the same family-sustaining benefits, the same sense of pride that the great manufacturing jobs of the 20th century did? Or is this a great reset into a new normal? A future of good jobs rather than great ones? That is the battle that is being fought right now in the heart of America. The real battle ahead. The real story of Lafayette, Indiana, is so much more complex and so much more important than a simple headline about tariffs. It's a story that reveals a deep-seated, justifiable fear of economic hollowing out. A fear so powerful it can shape a nation's narrative, even when the facts on the ground are changing. While Washington plays a high-stakes game of tariffs, and while Canada quietly emerges as the silent winner of that instability, the real American counterpunch is happening at the local level. It's not being waged by politicians on TV. It's being fought in the classrooms of community colleges in Ohio. It's being planned by local economic developers in Michigan, diversifying away from the past. It is a quiet, determined struggle, waged by communities who have decided they will no longer be dependent. They are fighting to unlock a new future, one they build for themselves. We've looked at the data, we've analyzed the strategy, but now I want to hear your story. You, the audience, are the ones who truly understand this. Are you living in one of these industrial communities? If a major factory in your town left or changed, what was the real impact that the news reports and the statistics missed? Do you see this hollowing out we've discussed? And what is your community doing to counterpunch? Share your experience, your truth, in the comments below. Because while these Rust Belt communities are fighting to recover from the last war, the entire game, the entire global economy is changing again. The new war is not for the car plants of today. It's for what goes inside the cars of tomorrow. It is a war for the supply chain, for batteries, for the critical minerals like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. And in our next video, we will investigate this future war for the EV supply chain and why Canada, once again, is quietly positioned to win it all. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. Thank you for watching.